Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Sandy Smith, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Stacey Davids. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Walter John Cummins. Walter Cummins was born in Brisbane on the 16th of May 1915, the son of Walter and Keitha Cummins. Known as Tiny, he went on to serve in the militia joining the Australian Army Service Corps, one of the corps that supplied the Army with the materials it needed to live, move, and fight. While the Australian Army Medical Corps, Royal Australian Engineers, and Corps of Signals maintained their own supply branches to distribute specialist equipment, the AASC were the Army's grocers who procured, stored, and distributed consumable stores such as food and petrol. They were also the Army's truckies who carried troops, stores, and ordnance where required. Cummins later enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force, doing so on the 1st of September, 1941. While he did not rejoin the Australian Army Service Corps, he maintained a similar role, becoming a driver for 141 General Transport Company. General Transport Companies, derived from field supply units, worked to transport supply items, including ammunition, between depots. Soon after, Japan opened the Asia-Pacific theater of the Second World War with their attacks on Malaya and Pearl Harbor on the 7th and 8th of December, 1941. They advanced southwards quickly, capturing much territory and defeating all Allied forces before them. By late January, they had captured Rabaul in New Britain, and soon they turned their attention to Papua and New Guinea. In March, they landed at Lae and Salamaua on New Guinea's Huon Gulf and seized them unopposed. But the prize they were after was Port Moresby on Papua's south coast. If the Japanese captured Moresby, it would deprive the Allies of their main forward base in the area and could also serve as the jumping-off point for a possible invasion of Australia. It had to be held, so more Australian troops were sent there. Around this time, after undergoing training at Red Bank Camp, Private Walter Cummins embarked for overseas service on the 21st of March 1942, arriving in Port Moresby 4 days later. After the Japanese attempt to take Moresby by sea was thwarted by Allied victory at the Battle of the Coral Sea in early May, they tried a different approach. On the 21st of July, they landed at Buna and Gona on Papua's north coast and quickly advanced overland towards Port Moresby. The Kokoda campaign ensued as the Australians made a fighting withdrawal from the mountains almost back to Moresby. The Japanese made it to Yoribaiwa within sight of the port, but exhausted, down in numbers, and out of supplies, they were forced to withdraw by late September. The Australians pursued them back over the Owen Stanley Ranges, and by early 1943 had defeated the Japanese force where they had landed some 6 months prior. Fighting continued into 1943 as the Australians and Americans looked to push the Japanese forces in New Guinea out. During this time, Private Cummins remained in Port Moresby. While the Japanese had bombed the port frequently during 1942, by 1943, these attacks had lessened. Life at the busy military base went on without much disturbance. On the 12th of July 1943, a Primus stove exploded in the workshop of Cummins' unit, and he sustained second-degree burns to his face, arms, chest, and legs. He was evacuated to hospital, where he was resuscitated with serum and morphine. Despite medical care, his condition worsened and he contracted toxemia, his blood being poisoned by toxins from a bacterial infection. Walter Cummins died of his injuries on the 14th of July, 1943. He was 28 years old. A court of inquiry held after his death found that there was no negligence, misconduct, or failure to observe any act, order, or regulation on the part of any person. Today, his remains lie buried in Port Moresby Bomana Cemetery alongside more than 3,800 Commonwealth burials of the Second World War. Above his grave is the inscription chosen by his grieving family. He died that we might live. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Walter John Cummins, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, Well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.